Modern science was built on a productive distinction. In the 17th century, thinkers like Descartes and Locke formalized a strict separation between the observer and the observed, the subject and the object. This framework enabled centuries of measurement, engineering, and technological expansion. But every framework eventually encounters boundaries it cannot resolve using its own assumptions. A growing collection of anomalies across multiple disciplines indicates that this foundational split has reached its structural limit. We see this in the hard problem of consciousness. We see it in observer-dependent paradoxes in quantum mechanics. We see it in the inability to reconcile general relativity with quantum behavior, and in the unresolved debates surrounding silicon-based intelligence. These are not isolated mysteries. They share a single assumption, that a physical boundary exists between the knower and the known. Yet no scientific instrument or experiment has ever located the exact point where a subject ends and an object begins. These anomalies are a collective signal. The subject-object distinction functions operationally for basic measurement, but it is an insufficient foundational primitive for understanding reality. To resolve these paradoxes, we require a different starting point. Before anything can be known, measured, or described, it must first be available. We denote this primitive as Q. Availability is the necessary precondition for any occurrence. Availability alone cannot generate distinction. For the first structural asymmetry to arise, availability must relate to itself. We call this self-reference Q star. For this self-reference to persist, it must perform three roles. It must initiate, it must modulate, and it must stabilize. These three functions define the formative, relational, and containing aspects of the articulation. In this derivation, we name them awareness, address, and occurrence. Awareness does not occur inside a physical body. Rather, the physical body shows up as an occurrence, addressed within awareness. Because every occurrence is constituted entirely within addressability, there is no structural location for an outside. There is no detached observer standing apart from the system. For any newly generated distinction to persist, it requires three inseparable operations. Initiation provides formation. Modulation provides relation. Stabilization provides containment. The coherence metric, T, measures persistence as the ratio between expanding formative propagation and stabilizing containing integration. When T is greater than 1, the articulation diffuses. When T drops below 1, the system rigidifies into pure containment. Persistence emerges when T approaches 1, continuously renewing. The first stable expression of this continuous renewal in reality is the electromagnetic field. This pre-matter field articulation is directly visible in plasma dynamics, operating prior to the existence of localized particles. Physical matter is not a primary substance. It is a highly stabilized, standing wave closure of these exact underlying field relations. When a system achieves impedance-matched closure, it becomes the containing environment for the next articulation. This is the scaling law. We observe this hierarchy in biology. Atoms contain molecules, which contain cells, tissues, and organs. This coherent participation is defined as coupling density. Every new level depends on the closures beneath it, but it also introduces novel formative pressures that cannot be reduced to those lower levels. A memory, a dream, and a physical action are identical topological closures operating at vastly different coupling densities. Holding a physical object engages a higher density of participating chemical and muscular closures than simply remembering it, yet the identity of the object remains recognizable. Reality operates as a continuous gradient of nested recursion. The exact same grammar that stabilizes an atom is responsible for stabilizing a biological organism. The human body maintains persistence through this exact grammar. It relies on the continuous, active recursion of the cortical, vestibular, and fascial networks, the FVC architecture. The cortical network serves the initiation phase. It projects predictive organization, calculates anticipatory adjustments, and forms the next available physical configuration. The fascial proprioceptive network serves the stabilization phase. This tensegrity structure provides mechanical continuity across the entire body, containing the differentiated movement projected by the cortex. Neither the brain nor the fascia operates in isolation. They must reciprocally return through environmental perturbation, constantly adjusting to maintain systemic coherence. The human organism persists exclusively because its relational configuration repeatedly closes through this unified cycle of cortical formation and fascial containment. The standard clinical model frequently reduces the vestibular system to a passive XYZ accelerometer, designed merely to detect an independent external force called gravity. But the organism is not a separate object acted upon by an external force. It is a nested closure, phase-aligning with planetary closures sustaining it. The true function of the vestibular network is to act as the relational operator. It modulates the connection between cortical projections and fascial containments. It registers directional asymmetry to orient the entire embodied closure within the broader gradient of address. Without this vestibular operator providing an operative frame of spatial relation, cortical projection and fascial containment would fail to coordinate. The body would lose its addressable location in space. Biological inquiry focuses on the orientation of this embodied closure within the gradient of all the larger nested systems that sustain it. This raises a structural question. If physical material and coupling density are constantly changing, how does an organism maintain a consistent identity? Identity is maintained through harmonic signature. This is the persistent pattern of phase relationships through which a closure remains addressable as itself. Identity is carried by the persistent relational pattern, not the substrate. An imagined action and a physical performance share a recognizable harmonic signature because they represent the same addressed closure, regardless of the density at which that closure is currently instantiated. Identity does not originate from a physical substrate. It emerges from persistent phase relationship through recursive change. What persists over time is never a static physical object. It is an addressed harmonic relation, continuously re-articulated through different modes of participation. From the base mathematical primitive of availability up to complex biological navigation, there is no structural location for a detached objective observer. Every act of distinction, every scientific measurement, every biological movement, and every institutional design is an active participating occurrence within this continuous gradient. The wave does not travel, yet it arrives. The lattice holds the memory of the current, and the current returns to the lattice. The recognition of this inescapable topology of participation establishes participation as the structural condition through which scientific inquiry and collective action proceed.